Hello and welcome to the holiday special podcast on AutoGuide. Today, Kyle, Greg, and I are going to talk about our highlights from the past year, maybe a lowlight or two. But first, we'll have a word from our sponsor. eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. All right, so we are going to kick things off talking about, I guess, the most memorable or the best, or maybe both, cars or trucks or vans or whatever that we drove this year. We've kind of narrowed it down to 5 categories. So let's start with the most traditional vehicle, the car. Let's Kyle. What was your best car you drove this year?
Oh man. So really I should have prepared for this better. The problem is that I kind of have 2 different answers. Very, very different answers. In terms of just like, full on incredible accomplishment, raises the bar even though it was already stratospherically high. I'm gonna go with the Lamborghini Revuelto. It feels like a cop-out, but I mean, the wild thing to me is that, it's a plug-in hybrid version of a V12 Lambo supercar, and yet it still has all the theater and drama, and it's 1,001 horsepower, and yet it is so easy to drive, but not in the sense that it feels like it's doing it for you. It was incredible. And so that would be my answer, but that feels unfair and kind of useless to the vast majority of anyone who's listening. And so I'm going to go with the most recent car I drove, actually. The Kia EV4.
Recency bias, maybe? I mean...
I thought about that, but I was sitting there going through and look, as Mike kind of hinted, there's not a whole lot of cars this year. And I drove a lot of good ones. I will say the Camry is great. The Camry is all the car most people need. The Lucid Air remains one of my favorite luxury sedans because it is just so smooth and so capable and feels like a sense of occasion. But I think the EV4 is so impressive because it's an affordable EV from a mainstream brand. And I know I bring this up as kind of a sore spot because, Greg, it's not coming to the US, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I'm rather excited about the EV4. I really like the EV6. I like how the EV4 looks. Maybe next time I'm up to Vertical Scope Tower there in Toronto, I can somehow get behind the wheel of one if they're on sale at that point.
Yeah, we don't have much to add because Kyle, obviously, you're the only one who's driven it. I have driven the Revuelto, and it's pretty fantastic, I will say. But I'll save my thoughts on sports cars for that category.
I guess I should have left that over there. Sorry, my bad.
But you're right. I was looking back at all the cars I drove, and I drove the 540 and something else, and then there was our compact car comparison back in the spring or late winter. It's that was it. That wasn't a performance car. There's so few just cars, which takes me to my what?
Oh, I was just gonna say you did drive every single Mini this year.
Yes, that's true.
That's a thought. That's a thing to reflect upon.
I was thinking more of them. Well, I drove 2 Countrymen, so they're SUVs. And the little ones, fair. I was thinking more of performance. But you're right, the 4-door is a car. But I just copped out and went back to our comparison test, and the Civic Hybrid is just so good. And if one of you guys were going to take it, I would have then said the Elantra Hybrid, which in our comparison was just barely second, where it's not as good as a Civic in many ways, but it's also a little more affordable. Mm-hmm. So that's just sort of, I think, where the sweet spot is. Anyone in that space that's not looking at a hybrid to compete directly or trying to do something different, like say Subaru with all-wheel drive or Mazda trying to be sporty, you can't compete right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the Civic is one of the hardest cars to write about because we've said everything, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so good at everything. It is one of those cars that just dominates its segment. And like you said, I mean, Subaru can do all-wheel drive, and that's great. But now that Subaru has a hybrid system, they should probably stick it in everything. I'm sure there's limits to that, and the Impreza probably isn't really high on the list. But yeah, like the Civic is unfairly good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the hybrid needs to go in the Outback, but I never really thought of the Impreza. But the Crosstrek is the Impreza, so it really shouldn't be hard to do.
Yeah.
Now that I think of it, that would actually really change that car's, I think, whole proposition. 40% better fuel economy, more smoother, quieter power. But you're like, I mean, it's a segment that. Yeah. So Greg, what did you pick?
I struggled with this a little bit. I thought about the Civic Hybrid because it's just so all around good. So I ended up going with something that was new, but also new to me, which was the Dodge Charger 6-pack with the Hurricane. I went with definitely looking at this through the enthusiast bent. Is this absolutely the best all-around car, the best car for everybody? Well, of course not. That's where you get into like the Civic Hybrid territory. But it was a lot of fun. I actually drove the EV and the Hurricane 6. Really liked them both. I like the styling. The interior kind of, I think, is maybe a little bit of a weak spot because it's the best way I could put it is like the patterns are almost like snake-like patterns. It's very Dodge on the door inserts. But I liked it. It was a lot of fun. I think, both the EV and the 6-cylinder are very good power plants. Even with the sort of artificial noise, that's what it is. I still think that sounds okay. I think it looks pretty good. I think it's the modern evolution of the Charger. It's not super retro. It's just clean. It looks like a muscle car. So I like it. I mean, I think it was a lot of fun to drive, and yeah, this was a tough one, but that's where I landed. I also thought about the Honda Prelude. That was really cool. But you got to pick one, so that's how I went.
You're really leaning into my overpowered large American sedan love. I actually looked and I was like, okay, I didn't drive a CT5 this year, Blackwing or regular, so that doesn't work. And then I was like, oh, the 6-pack. If I drove that, I wonder if that would have been it. But I haven't driven it, so I couldn't pick it. And that's one I'm really looking forward to, hopefully in the new year. So since you picked it, I've got high hopes for it. And I didn't drive the Prelude either, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
They were neck and neck. Very, very good. What actually tipped it over for me was trying to think the Charger with 2 and 4 doors and electric and, ICE is a little more like broad. It's as a broader mission than the Prelude. So that's kind of what I guess put it over for me.
It's a good reason.
Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to another segment that's fairly big, kind of big, trucks and SUVs, the 90% of the market these days. This is a tough one if you count them all together because you drive such a wide range. And I ended up with 2 from the same manufacturer, and I'll leave that tease there for now. Greg, why don't we have you start this time?
All right. So this is a tough one. Again, I guess I should probably make that disclaimer for all of our categories, although maybe for some of them it actually wasn't. For me, it was 4Runner or Honda Passport Trail Sport. And I ended up going with the Honda. I really liked how the Honda looked because I think it looks to me as much like off-road capable as like most of the really capable off-roaders. It really looked the part, but it also was super comfortable to drive. I put, probably 500 miles on one at least. We went camping in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, which is pretty far north. It's out there. It's in the wilderness, and it took all the gear, camping, fishing, golf clubs, all that good stuff. And we got there, and it was super comfortable. The ride up I-75, it was everything I was looking for. And the interior is pretty nice. I think that was, it's very Honda quality. The Trail Sport trim does some nice things. It has one of those like kind of hood vent scoop things, which is I'm sure not functional, but it looks like it should be. Big tires, and the brief amount of off-roading I did do up there, because you got to go down some trails, like it's the UP, right? Half of it isn't even paved. So you got to go over dirt and a little bit of mud, and it was certainly capable for that. You could queue up the different drive modes. To me, this is a vehicle I would recommend to everybody who's thinking, hey, I think I want a Wrangler or a Bronco, but I'm mainly just going to drive around with it, like in suburbia, and not even go off-roading. I would say, get this. This is like your daily driver that can do, some off-road things. So I really like that. It stuck with me, and that's where I landed. I thought the 4Runner is right in there too. You're seeing a theme here with me, I guess. But to me, this is a broader sort of vehicle.
Kyle and I are actually doing we did a comparison on those two vehicles. So it's funny you brought them up. I was literally writing it up before we came to this podcast. So fresh in mind. And yeah, no, everything said about Passport I like. I won't get into giving away our comparison until it's all done. But I really like the 4Runner's old school styling with the TRD Pro. How it has the old fender flares like it used to in that sort of Coke bottle shape. And yeah, and the Pilot's so much improved too. Or Passport so much improved too.
Cool. Yeah, I totally understand your reasoning in both cases, Greg. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I did. I guess we got to go for a win. I did go with the Honda, but close second place, podium finish there for the 4Runner. So yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's also like, I drove the Maverick Lobo. It's a truck. I'm very tempted to throw that in there, but I guess that would be my third place. Not that we're doing rankings, but I don't know. What did you guys think?
Greg's top 10.
Yeah.
Kyle, what did you have there? I mean, you've driven a lot of SUVs this year.
Yeah. I mean, since Greg mentioned it, the Maverick, not the Lobo, just overall the rest of the lineup for me is possibly the winner. I just had a Maverick XLT hybrid all-wheel drive review go live as we're recording this. And that really is the Goldilocks trim for me because, I mean, you can get the 4K tow package now on the hybrid. So there's that out of the way. Obviously, you can get all-wheel drive now. The XLT has basically everything you need. It does miss out on some towing assist that I think would be useful, especially because I assume the Maverick has a pretty high conquest rate of people who have never actually been in a truck before. Because, I mean, it's so appealing, right? It drives like a crossover. It's not as affordable as it used to be, but it's still fairly affordable for what you get. I really like it. I think it's overall the sort of truck that we need to maybe encourage people to look at more because full-size trucks are ridiculous and they're tanks and they have the visibility of tanks. So that was close for me. But overall, I think I'm giving it to the Hyundai Palisade. But specifically here, I'm going the other direction from you, Greg, because I think you and I have driven the XRT Pro.
That's right.
And I only drove that on the launch event very briefly, and it was on a trail, right, to show that it can do off-roading. But living with it in the city, it's actually kind of boat-like. And meanwhile, the calligraphy is just so smooth, so swanky. It really does challenge vehicles like Buick or Volvo or Infiniti or Acura in terms of feeling like a special premium vehicle. And then if you can get the hybrid, which is an incredibly good deal, especially in Canada, it's barely more money than the regular V6. You get better fuel economy, more power, a quieter ride. I really do think that the Palisade is continuing Hyundai's push closer and closer to these premium brands. If you stuck a Genesis badge on it, people actually probably wouldn't question it.
I agree with you totally. The Palisade was also in my top 5, and I have a calligraphy hybrid in my driveway right now.
Same.
And I mean, we should do some driver's notes or more of a podcast or something, but it's so good. And I think I agree with you completely with the XRT, whereas I was kind of like, it was everything the Passport Trailsport wasn't. It didn't look the part, even though it was relatively capable. They did do some very light, like mechanical stuff, I think, to it. Whereas with the Honda, they don't really do much to it beyond dressing it up. Whereas, the calligraphy, I mean, I've had people already ask me, like, is that a Land Rover? What is that thing? I went to pick up a pizza and the guy's like, your Cadillac is ready for you, sir. I'm like, that's not a Cadillac, and also you're putting it in the wrong car. I parked this other spot, but it gets that much attention. So yeah, I agree with you totally.
Yeah. The those big Korean SUVs have been pretty successful. I remember when the Telluride first came out, people kept saying it looked like a Land Rover, and now with the Palisade, you're getting all sorts of different comparisons. I can't disagree with you on the Maverick, Kyle. It was neck and neck for my number one as well. But for me, it's the opposite. I don't really like the hybrid. I like the 2-liter. I think it's the right combo of what I need. And this fuel's still decent. The Lobo is amazing, as Greg said.
The Lobo's fun.
Yeah. And that's like what I'd love to have. But I could just go with like an XLT turbo all-wheel drive and be happy. XL maybe is a little too stripped out, but yeah, it's just such a good all-around for what I need. It does everything. It does a little bit of everything I want. Where not many vehicles do that, but we've gone on and on about how great that is, and I think the three of us kind of consensus say it's definitely up there. I'm with another Ford, and this is not because it's practical or necessarily all that great, just because it was so cool and so memorable, and that's the Bronco Heritage Edition, specifically the robin's egg blue with the white roof. I've never had a car that got so many compliments for such a cross section of people. Like no one was even like, oh, that's cool. Everyone was like, that's amazing. That thing looks so cool. Like people who like off-roaders, people who don't even have a car, people that are older, people that are younger. Like everyone it's just one of those things that just brings a smile. Sort of like a vehicle I have right now, the ID Buzz. But even some people are like, oh, it's massive, or oh, it's whatever. But driving the Bronco Heritage, it drives so much better than a Wrangler. I would say it drives not much worse than a 4Runner. They've done a good job driving a solid axle in the back, and I don't know, it makes you feel like you should be just hitting the nearest trail to go off-roading with that big wide hood and you need to have the Sasquatch, which the Heritage has, with those chunky tires, the fender flares. I don't know. Every time you get out of it, you think you're some off-road adventure, even if you're in one of the biggest cities in North America.
Yeah, I mean, I get that one a lot. It's a pure heart over head decision, but I mean, that's why we all get cars, let's be honest. I drove the 2-door one when we did our comparison last year, and it was the same sort of spec, but the 2-door, in my mind, has even cooler proportions. And yeah, like you have people who would never even look at an SUV just being like, please tell me more. I'm very curious about this vehicle. It's insanely cool.
People love nostalgia, and I think Ford has done a really good job with that. With some of the different Bronco editions, like the Strop one, or Strop, however you say it, that Forest Service one, that was really cool a couple years ago. They do a good job at really kind of tugging at the heartstrings and making you sort of yearn for the past.
Yeah, good modern takes. I mean, they did that with the Mustang so many years ago, and that kind of gave it new life. So yeah, they've definitely perfected that craft. But like we said, that category is so big; it could have 7 subcategories within SUV. So that's why I was like, well, this is the best in that category, and that's the best in this. So I just went with the one that I think about every once in a while fondly and remember how cool it was to drive.
That's a good reason. That's literally how I made delineation among my 1 versus 2 and 3 is, well, this one stayed with me. So,
Yeah. The way it should be. All right. Well, we'll move on. We've got 3 categories still to go. Primary categories, that is. So, Kyle, I'll go first this time, but sorry to do this since you already talked about it. But this was going to be the best EV we drove this year. Okay. So we may know Kyle's answer. Although now you can throw SUVs, so maybe something was better than the EV4. Yeah. For me, there was. For me, I have 2, and again, I'm getting stuck in this terrible theme of performance or coolness over practicality, but it's just what sticks with me. So, Kyle, you and I both drove the Mustang Mach-E Rally, which is just so cool, especially green. I mean, it's like sort of like the Bronco Heritage. It looks cool. It's got those fake OZ rally wheels. It's fast. It handles well. It's a decent EV, and it was going to be my pick, but I think just eclipsing it is one of its main direct competitors, and that's the Chevy Blazer EV-SS. That thing, I was really impressed. I mean, it doesn't have CarPlay, so that almost keeps it in first place alone. But we'll ignore that fact for a moment. But it was just, aside from that, it did everything else I'd want, and it has ridiculous power. And because it's more on-road focused, it drove a little nicer around the city and has tons of space for family and good range. And it was just... Maybe it was one of those vehicles I had no idea what to expect, so it impressed me. So that's why I remember it so fondly. But I really did like that.
That's 2 domestics in a row for you.
Wow.
4 really, because I came second place in them. I know.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, I wouldn't have had that on my bingo card for you, Mike. I would have.
Nope.
I'm not sure. I guess I don't know everything you've driven, but that wasn't what I thought you would have picked.
I've driven a good chunk of EVs. I mean, ID Buzz was this year and some other things, but that was just sort of like the Maverick. The Blazer EVSS gives me a little bit of everything. Sort of like the CT5 Blackwing. I always go on about. I get performance. I get family functionality. I get space. I get, I mean, the downside to all those are price, but this is, I'm ignoring that right now.
There's a Blackwing in the fleet around here that I waited too long because we have too much snow. But if they could maybe like deliver it to my house like right now and I could give it back like Friday morning when the next bout of snow is coming, I would love to drive that car for like just 18 hours or 36 hours. Yep. I digress.
It would only be 2 tanks.
Yeah.
Don't even...
yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm with Greg. I did not see that one coming.
I guess I'll go next.
Pick? Did you have any? It's probably an EV I forgot I even drove. Actually, no, I looked through everything I drove this year.
Here I was thinking it was going to be the Fiat 500.
Giorgio Armani edition, specifically.
The 500 electric was memorable. I drove that last summer, I guess it was. I took it to like the city pool, and people were really like walking up to me. They're like, "What is that?" And you tell them it's electric, and it like blows their mind. And they're like, "What? This is crazy." And then they're like, "You could get your family in that thing." So it really, it definitely has it has a certain charm, as Italian cars do.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, exactly. and I really liked it when I drove it last year, but I wouldn't have picked it this year because the Armani is just too much money for giving you really nothing but the name and some interesting wheel choices. But I mean, a lot of the EVs I really like the Lyric, the i4, more I'm forgetting. I didn't drive any this year, so I had to go with what I drove. All right, Greg. Sorry, you're about to.
No worries. This is going to be a cliche, but this is probably one of the most expensive EVs I drove this year. That's the 2025 EQS 450 4MATIC. So that is the Mercedes. You get 367 miles of range. You pay for it because it was well into the 6 figures. But I liked it. I thought they really delivered with this thing. I know Mercedes is kind of like basically said they're going to move away from these kind of like bubble shaped electrics and make them more conventional looking. Man, I say don't do that. I really like how this thing looks. It looks like it's from the future. It got a lot of attention. I think if I were going to spend this much money on an electric, like it's a crossover really, I would want people to be like, what is that thing over there? So the interior was beautiful. It was, in some ways I like the electric interiors a little bit more than the gas-powered versions of the hybrids, which I have another Mercedes coming up, so I maybe am talking out of both sides of my mouth here. But yeah, it's a cliche to pick one that's so expensive, but it was great. I really liked it. I thought it was it fulfilled its mission, which I think some electric cars with their like lesser ranges don't necessarily do. Yeah, and it's interesting. I drove it back to back with Mercedes S580. So it's kind of like I could kind of like benchmark them like, hey, do you like the electric? Do you like the gas? And, somewhat different segments, obviously, but I thought I really liked it. Hey, it's expensive, but nice things cost money.
Yeah. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why this has happened because it's completely coincidental, but this is my 3rd straight year of having an EV over the holidays. I have a Leaf, and last year I had the Buzz, and the year before that I had the EQE AMG SUV.
Okay.
And yeah, like it was a fantastic vehicle. I mean, way out of my price range, but the crazy launch control on those AMG versions is fun and hilarious. And yeah, it's a well put together vehicle. And I think the SUVs, the bubbly translates a little more conventional. It's not as like eye catching for better or worse as the sedans, but yeah, no, that's a solid vehicle. I'm curious to see what Mercedes does with the next gen.
The Leaf was also on my list, but the caveat was I actually haven't driven it yet. It's arriving Monday, And I just literally at the opposite end of the spectrum, and like the range is pretty impressive, and it's, you know, they're pitching it as a crossover this year. I mean, that definitely got my attention. And I think had I driven it, I may have gone more like bargain oriented, but you know, it was this, or actually I drove the Hummer last fall too. And I was like, well, this is a lot of fun. Maybe I'll pick this one. But the Mercedes just seemed a little more electric tech forward, whereas the Hummer just was like hard to keep in like the same lane even. So
yeah. Same,
right,
2
Kyle.
lanes really.
right.
Okay, so this is a tough one for me, probably the hardest category because I drove a lot of EVs this year. The Leaf was on my list because, I mean, for the same reason the EV4 is, right? Is that it's affordable, and for that alone, it should qualify, and then it's also just good to drive. And I like the new look. I think the crossover thing is definitely just the marketing team winning over the actual usage of the car. But yeah, the Leaf is good. Cadillac's EVs are really impressive outside of the Escalade IQ. I really like the Optic because I feel like it's the entry luxury EV that a lot of brands should be making and aren't. And then for 26, they're actually switching it to rear-wheel drive, which sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
The Vistic is a really great 3-row. The Lucid Gravity was probably the most all-around impressive vehicle that I drove, but it, you know, comes with a price tag to match. And so I'm landing on one that I drove fairly recently, but it's a game changer, and it's the BMW iX3. The tech in that thing works really well. I know we're always, as journalists, we're a little apprehensive when companies are telling us, oh, don't worry, we put more screens in the thing. But it works in a way that feels very natural. Mm-hmm. And the actual EV powertrain is so smooth. They have this, I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it wasn't with you, Greg. They have this smooth stop feature in the iX3 that sounds like it would be pretty easy to implement into any EV, right? But it's something that I've never experienced before. Like if you lift off, the car will slowly roll to a stop, and there is no jerk whatsoever when it comes to a stop. Apparently, this was a huge pain to program, but how BMW tested it was blindfolding people and then, you know, accelerating and then trying to decelerate and asking people to guess when the car had actually come to a complete stop, and no one could guess accurately because of how smooth it is. So I find that really fascinating. The range is excellent. It's 400 miles or 650 kilometers. Fast charging is even quicker than any other thing on the market. It looks kind of good. I've warmed to BMW's new styling language, which is good because it's going to be on dozens of vehicles over the next few years. I really do think this is kind of skipping a generation and going from what we knew of luxury SUV EVs and just kind of really jumping forward. And pricing wise, we don't have exact numbers yet, but it's going to end up, they told us the range is just at the top of where the X3 is. So we're getting closer to price parity too, which I think is important.
Yeah. Having been to the launch, that's something I really look forward to driving, like learning all about it. I'm really curious how, you kind of alluded to it there, how the braking works, with them saying 90% of the braking will be done with the gearing and not with physical brakes, which is crazy, but also kind of cool. So yeah, that's that and the Charger, and I guess the Prelude. Those are the 3 cars I really can't wait to drive next year. All right, so did we get Greg's?
Yeah,
for electric
EQS.
EQS.
Oh, right.
My 6-figure Mercedes with a beautiful interior.
Right. I was just going down memory lane of some of the other EVs I drove, but
one that it wasn't new this year, but I, kind of touch off of your Blazer comment. I really like the Equinox too. It was kind of new for last year, so I didn't include it, but I thought that was really strong. And the pricing is pretty aggressive. And now that the tax incentives have gone away here in the US, it's less, compelling of a value, but it's still a pretty good deal and a pretty good crossover. So, I don't know. We don't have any honorable mentions lists, but there's some things that like I drove that did stay with me, even if they weren't maybe brand new. So.
Well, I think we'll take a quick break here on the Auto Guide show brought to you by eBay Motors. We have more categories to go. We still have performance vehicle and we have luxury vehicle. And I'm going to have some surprise, maybe awards categories to spring on the guys after that. But we'll be back in a couple minutes. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe worst of all, wait hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? That era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and DIYers. Because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs and trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital, so you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle, plates, and paperwork shipped to your door ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling a ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still owe on your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the 5th still available messages. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups. Buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, and eBay subsidiary. Okay, we are back. Let's move on to luxury. We've all kind of already mentioned luxury vehicles. So will there be a repeat, or is this going to be something new? Greg, we'll start with you since you just talked about that sweet electric luxury car.
All right. Well, I guess staying with luxury, I really enjoyed the Mercedes E53 hybrid this year. I thought it was a nice blend of being well appointed, but also very sporty. I really liked the powertrain. It was gutsy, but again, it's a hybrid. I put a ton of miles on this thing. I drove out to I live in the northern suburbs of Detroit, and I drove to Ann Arbor, which is a good 50, 60 mile drive one way. So, and I did that 2 or 3 times the week I had this car. So this wasn't just like, hey, I got this fancy Mercedes, I drove it Tuesday and love it. It was like I lived with this thing for quite a while. And I had a lot of thoughts. I was trying to actually go through my iPhone Notes app when I was writing my storage to make it somewhat coherent, because I was really just brain, vomiting all over the place as far as just so many impressions about this thing. And, but yeah, I liked it. I think this is, sometimes when you look at luxury, it's easy to pick, like I just did, this super expensive, electric or something, or pick something niche. But I think this is really all the performance car you need. It's, I love that it's, the traditional E-segment sedan, which I've always had a fondness for, whether it's the Mercedes E-Class or the BMW 5 Series. And this just really struck a chord with me. Even the little things, like the sound system was amazing. I went to pick up some Chinese food, and there was just this long line out the door, and I was like, okay. So I just sat there and turned up some Bruce Springsteen and just sat there with a massage going. And, it was very luxurious, but also it's what passes for an AMG these days. So it's pretty potent as well. And it sounded good. The steering was very dialed in. It had that kind of AMG steering wheel where it's a little bit flat on the bottom. Again, this was the opposite of the EQS interior, which was very minimalistic. This is almost nautical in themes with the vents, the big vertical vents, the striping, the wood. Pretty big back seat too, took the whole family around, got a car seat back there. So, I mean, to me, this is everything as an enthusiast I would want, as somebody who likes to embrace new technology with some form of electrification. It's a hybrid, and also is a family guy. Hey, I could put everybody in it. So I really like that. So, I mean, 10 out of 10, this was actually not a hard choice for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, since you were on Mercedes, I think I'll continue the theme then and go with my pick, which is also a Mercedes, and it's also a sedan. This is a surprise.
Huh.
But it was actually last winter I had it, and it is the A45 AMG. It just is everything that speaks to me. I love those 4-door, like high performance, especially little, like almost rally cars. And this is like a street version of that. I mean, over 400 horsepower in a vehicle that size. Like I said, in the winter, so there was snow everywhere. And even though it's front wheel drive biased in the AMG Plus, Sport Plus, whatever modes, it'll send a lot of power to the rear still. And you can slide around, and it's nimble. The steering's good. You can feel how light it is. It's the most affordable AMG. It's small inside, but it's big enough for my family. It was one of those I didn't want to give back, and I really enjoyed it. And I actually started pricing out and thinking, how could I make this work if I wanted to get one? It was just, and even though it's a 4-cylinder, it still sounds really cool when you get the valved exhaust open. And then the interior is still a Mercedes, and the exterior maybe isn't the nicest, but with the AMG and the quad tips and the little spoiler, I think it helps take away some of that awkward rear slope, since they call it a coupe, even though it's a 4-door. It was very, very functional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a very niche pick, and I love it. Like going with that A-Class in there, that's like, let's see how much luxury we can get in one of the smallest segments. So I like that. Bravo.
Yeah, I would argue, Mike, like I remember how much you enjoyed that because we got together to film very briefly, and I drove it for a little bit. I would argue that that's actually probably the best CLA ever in terms of looks. Because the first generation had kind of a pig nose that I wasn't a big fan of, and now this current generation still taking some getting used to. But this one, fantastic.
Yeah, the sort of the extra lower bumper part of the front, like I said, what the treatment in the back, it makes it look like a more of a baby CLS. Even though that doesn't exist anymore, but that's sort of the vibe you get. And I mean, I don't mind the CLA. I've driven the 250, and even it was still nice. And I've driven the 35, which is probably the real sweet spot for price to performance. But this is just so over the top. Like Mercedes is going to have credit. They have 2-liter 4-cylinders making over 400 horsepower. Like no one's doing that in just a regular car. If this was in a Subaru or Mitsubishi, people would be losing their minds over this rally car that makes 400 plus horsepower out of a 2-liter. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well,
Kyle, are you gonna keep the streak going, or are you switching off Mercedes?
I believe we picked like 3 straight Mercedes at this point. So
I almost did pick a Mercedes. not even kidding. So I drove the CLE 450 convertible this fall, and I love that car because it is a proper 4-door convertible, which I think is rare. Not 4-door, 4-seat convertible, which I think is rare these days. I think a lot of convertibles that can have a back seat are usually too tight, and this was fine for adults. It's the 450, so it's not the AMG, so it is the right level of sportiness in my mind for an open-air Mercedes. The inline 6, as Greg will attest, because a version of it is in the 53, is so insanely smooth when you want it to be. It's one of the best engines out there. Overall, though, it was just a little too benign, which is why I couldn't pick it. Similarly, I was really close to picking the LC500 because I love that car. I find any excuse to drive that thing any year because that is one of the best production V8s, and it is a pretty car, and it's kind of a great value in a weird sense for a 6-figure car. But the problem that I had with it was a coupe. And the convertible is the better LC, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. So in the end, I'm talking about my also rants, and I have briefly had a brain fart here about what my actual luxury pick was. Hold on one second. It was right there. Please. talk amongst yourself about the LC.
While you're doing that, let me vamp for you here. One thing I just noticed is I've picked 2 cars with straight 6-cylinder engines, which is that a sign of the times for this year or what? The Hurricane 6, which I really liked. You guys have probably driven it in different things. But also the inline 6 and the Mercedes AMG E53. It's just a rocket ship. So it's my favorite engine of the year. If I were to give an award, is the straight 6.
Yeah,
I think I've only picked turbos except for the EV.
Well, there's not a lot of non-turbos left outside of like compact cars and sports cars.
Well, the LC, and I agree with you on the LC. The convertible is the better one.
Yeah, that's the tough thing, right? Like I don't understand with that V8 sounding so good. Why do you want to have a coupe? So my pick is actually something that I mentioned earlier. That's why I forgot. It's the Cadillac Optic.
Oh yeah,
that's my luxury pick of the year. Is that thing was so impressive. I know it's barely smaller than a Lyric, so the idea that it's this small EV is kind of pushing it. But I took that for a road trip with my wife and my sister and my dog, and it was such a satisfying vehicle to be in. The interior is, I said this in the review, it really competes with Genesis for the sense of occasion. And I understand that, there might be people who are listening who aren't really familiar with modern Genesis interiors, but they're amongst the most adventurous and most colorful. And that's how I feel with the Optic too. It had the blue leather or faux leather interior, but unless you tell people it's fake, no one's going to know. It's very convincing. There's great quilting. There's great attention to detail. And I love the center console with what looks like wood trim, and then you look closely and see that it's the compacted newspaper, and you can see some of the type in the grain. I love it. It's such a great car, and even with the lack of CarPlay and Android Auto, Cadillac wins it for me.
I tell you what, I drove the Optic, the Vistic, and the Lyric, and the only thing why I didn't frankly give them more points was because they all kind of blended together for me. I drove them like back to back to back in a group test and trying to use the criteria of, hey, what stayed with you? Maybe if I'd had like a longer week-long loan with one of them, that may have stayed with me a bit. But I hear you. I thought the interiors of all of them were outstanding. And I mean, call me crazy. I think the exterior design is really cool too now.
Oh, yeah.
I think they've really gotten to a point where they've made Cadillac something different and special again. It's not this old man car. It's not retro, or worse yet, unintentionally retro. It's like legitimately a cool brand right now.
Yeah, I think about I don't come to Detroit as often as I once did a few years ago, but whenever we go to Detroit, we tend to stay in one of those like fairly new redone hotels. And I really like this, like, it's not raw Americanism, but it's like a very confident, stylish version of like American interior design. And I really think that's what Cadillac has captured with the latest cars in a way that is like nothing else on the market. I really like them.
The Book Cadillac Hotel by chance? Because it's actually like 100-year-old structure they gutted and rebuilt, like as you would say right there. It's interesting you say that. To touch on exactly what you said, I interviewed Mark Royce once, and somebody asked him saying, hey, well, what should Cadillac and Chevy and GM be? And he was like, it shouldn't be retro. This like syrupy 1950s Americana. He's like, it should be the best because it is the best, not because it used to be. And so it's like, literally, you paraphrased Mark Royce from the New York Auto Show from about 8 years ago. But I think exactly what they're going for is what is starting to come through in the products.
So as we move on to our last category, it seems Kyle likes EVs, Greg likes big sedans, and I like turbos and all-wheel drive. Seems to be a themes we got going here. So our final one is best performance car. And Kyle, you kind of stole my thoughts earlier, because for me, I'm just going to go with the craziest thing I drove this year. And I did drive the Lamborghini Revuelto, which was the craziest, but also drove the Temerario. And that's my pick because it makes only 100 horsepower less, and it costs like half as much, and its performance numbers are like a fraction off of the big boy. Now, the V12 easily sounds better. It sounds amazing. But that V8 at 9 to 10,000 RPM. So that was pretty cool too. And then when you hit the fuel cutoff or you do the shift point, the turbo explodes as like it releases all of the pressure. It's and it's way more frantic. Whereas you said how the big Lambo is so livable and easy to drive. Like this is too, but it wants to be driven hard. Like it does not like being driven below 4 to 6,000 RPM. It's the engine sounds like a tractor, and it's just kind of like, what are you doing? Like drive me hard. So yeah, that's it. Because I'm just going with the ridiculous.
I mean, I don't blame you. That is the car that probably topped the list of the vehicles that I would very much like to try next year. Because yeah, the Temerario, the stats are nuts. Like, why are we getting a brand new car in 2026 that can rep to 10,000? I'm not complaining. I'm just like, how? How are we doing this? Incredible.
So, Greg, what is your sporty vehicle?
Ooh, I have two. This was tough, but I went with the McLaren Artura. I just drove it a few weeks ago, actually, and it was the Spider. So that meant I got to put the top down when it was already just about to snow. I'll have a review on that going up. Probably by the time this goes up, the review will be up. So I'm trying to clear out my fall reviews here. It's awesome. I mean, like, what are you going to say, right? I mean, best performance, you pick a McLaren, like, sure. I was also lucky to drive a 750S earlier this year, which is like the Artura is more or less the entry level sort of McLaren, so to speak. And the 750S is more powerful. I think it's a little bit bigger, but I kind of like the value you got for the Artura. Like the way I put it is you don't absolutely have to win the lottery or be like, bequeath generational wealth to get the Artura. Like you can play your cards right, maybe hit on a few stocks, get promoted. This car is in the realm of possibility for a normal human to buy. Whereas the 750S, like, unless your last name is, Rockefeller or something, it's a little out of reach, I suppose. But I mean, it's just a brilliant car to drive. It completes the fact that all of my picks here have 6 cylinders. So that's kind of interesting. Beautiful too. I think McLaren styling has evolved in the last probably dozen years. Like at first, they didn't even really know what they were doing when they kind of relaunched the road car business. Then it got really like almost like Sea Monster like and kind of like the mid 20 teens. And these last few McLarens I've driven have just been beautiful. They sound good. They have like just real, like, they're gutsy cars to drive, but they're also accessible too. The visibility is very good. You can see out of them, so you're not like crazy intimidated. Like, what if I break this car and have to remortgage my house or something? So to me, they have a confidence that I don't necessarily get with Lambos and Ferraris, which that's a funny sentence, but I just think McLarens are laid out a little better. And like the sort of the angle of the 8 pillars, it's just a better user experience, to use that cliche. So that's my pick, McLaren Artura. It's awesome. I mean, of course it's awesome. So
it's been a long time since I drove a McLaren. Now you're making me want to get behind the wheel of one again. Because last one I drove was a 650S. That's how long ago we're going back.
Yeah.
And I quite liked that car. So yeah. All right. Well, we're going supercars here, Kyle. What about you?
Oh man, I hope Lamborghini's not listening. Look, I love the Repo Alto, and like I said, I kicked off this whole episode with that. But there were 2 cars that just slightly eclipsed it for me this year in terms of sports cars. One of them was the vehicle that I was in immediately after it, which is really funny. It was the Miata. You know what? Every year, the Miata is now a decade old in its current generation, and it kind of feels like it in some ways, right? Like the interior is cramped. There's not a lot of storage space for anything. The infotainment system is Mazda's infotainment system. But there's something so satisfying about getting into a Miata and just knowing you can go pretty much anywhere because it has decent ground clearance. It's a little soft, so it leans a little into corners, but that just telegraphs what it's doing and where its limits are. It's the ultimate palate cleanser of a modern vehicle. No matter what you get into, and then you drive a Miata, it just resets everything. Driving it at the tail end of summer is also the perfect time for it. And mine was the 35th anniversary special. So it was that wine red with the tan leather and the tan roof and the actual silver finish wheels, not the black ones. So it looked fantastic. I really like that car. And I feel like, you know, Miata sales haven't been great lately. So I'm just trying to remind people, look, we're really lucky that that thing exists. But my winner is actually a Porsche. Surprise, surprise.
Which one?
The 911 Carrera T.
Good choice.
Because you know what? Like now that I don't want to lean into Porsche's marketing of being like, oh, it's the manual car and it's the only manual 911 you can get outside of a GT3. But that's actually kind of the appeal, is it's a GT3 for the people who don't want to be on a wait list for years or have bought multiple Porsches and are now waiting for their GT3. It is a regular production model. It is the base engine, which is 388 horsepower, plenty quick. That 6-speed is excellent, and it flies under the radar because it looks basically like a regular 911 unless people clock the decals that you may or may not have spec'd. It's so sweet, and its limits are still incredibly high because it's a 911, but there are limits that you can actually sort of approach on the road where you can't do that with a lot of other 911s. Like I drove the GTS, the T Hybrid. It is insane how quick a non-turbo 911 is. But yeah, for me, it's the T. The T was the one that I think we've all said it on this podcast. The car that you don't want to hand back, that was the one where I was like, you know, I really want to keep holding on to this key. So that's my pick.
Yeah, those cars like that engagement that Porsche offers you is just, it's tough to replicate. So
yeah,
I got to get behind the wheel of 911. It's been a little while too.
Yeah,
I've always enjoyed them when I've tried them before. So I can't disagree with that pick. I was actually surprised. We got a pretty wide cross section of vehicles, even though we all maybe stuck to themes at times. So before we wrap up the Auto Guide show, the special edition for the holiday season, brought to you by eBay Motors, 3 quick fire, not categories, but questions, and just whatever you think of quickly. I'll say first each time because I already know them. So
should have poured myself a whiskey here.
Yeah. So, all right, let's start with, I would say we could all agree last year, most improved or comeback player of the year car was probably the Prius, what it went from to what it became.
Yep.
So what would you consider this year's car to be? I would say having driven it, for me, it was the Subaru Solterra, and I didn't drive it, but I'm assuming the Toyota BZ, because those went from kind of forgettable, uncompetitive EVs to right at the heart of the segment in just one model year. Like, such a great change. Is that yours, Kyle? Did I steal yours?
I was going to say the BZ because I was planning on you saying the GMC that you drove recently.
That wasn't this year necessarily, but yeah, no, I went to the first drive of the Solterra, and in Canada there's a big delay, and it was last year. So within less than a year, then I went to the refresh, and it was like a whole different car. I didn't mind the first one, but I got that if it's your money, less power, less range, why are you going for it? Now they both have more distinct styling. I kind of like the Subaru styling. It's different for them. And then the range and the power is right there in the segment, and it has the most ground clearance. So it actually does have more capability than pretty much all its competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agree with that. I guess I'll go with a literal comeback player, which is the V8 Hemi and the Ram. I think I don't totally buy into the fact that they absolutely needed it. But I mean, if you look at what Ford and Chevy are doing, this was an opportunity for them to kind of reinforce the Ram. And I drove it. It's a Hemi V8 and the Ram, and it does give a different character to the truck. You know, I personally think I like the Hurricane 6 a little better, just totally sticking with that crazy theme I seem to have developed. But I mean, it is there for, like, if you want a V8, there is no replacement for displacement. So I think I got to go with that because it does change the character of the truck.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, Kyle and I were on board with the same vehicle, different corporate siblings, but the same idea. But that's because I drove the Solterra and you drove the BZ. So Craig, you should have gone with the RZ, the Lexus. You know,
I thought about it. I actually did.
Complete the triple. All right. So next, most under the radar vehicle you drove this year, something that people forget exists or don't give enough credit to. I'll do 2. One is, Kyle, you just mentioned it, the Terrain Denali. I was very impressed with that specific trim. Some of the stuff you get in it, you don't get in the regular Terrain, and that was a difference maker. So I think you need to stick with the Denali. And the other one is something your Miata sort of wrapped it up. It's just the regular Mazda 3 sedan. I had a manual hatchback earlier in the year, and then we had the sedan in our comparison, and it's smaller, and yeah, the hatch looks nicer, but the sedan's surprisingly spacious, and it's easily still probably the most fun to drive, especially with the turbo all-wheel drive version. Although I think I have to get a hatch for that, but even the 2.5 is still a great little car, and I for how old it's been on the market, it's still one of the better ones. Like, they did such a good job with it.
I will go with the sort of. I'll split this a little bit here. The Lincoln Aviator. I drove a Black Label one. Thought it was awesome. I don't think the Aviator gets near the amount of attention it should, either in the luxury segment or even by Lincoln. I think they should play it up more. To me, it's a pitch perfect design inside and out. And I actually drove the Buick Enclave Sport to another UP trip for me. And I think people totally forget about the Enclave. 10, 15 years ago, it was so like the design was much different than what was going on in the industry at the time. And the Enclave stood out. Then they didn't even really change it for a good 5, 6, 7 years because it was so much different. And sales were even going up, the older it got. So now I think it's a little bit of sort of the forgotten sibling in the Buick lineup and maybe even the GM portfolio, but I liked it. It was a solid vehicle. Very, very good vehicle. Kind of a sleeper pick right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess we drove before the last refresh of the Enclave or last new model. I'm trying to think.
We drove the facelift against the Toyota Highlander. But yeah, we have not driven the current version.
But that one, even still, I was saying a lot of stuff you're saying, Greg, is like it doesn't, I think, get enough recognition because there's a lot of people in the industry who want only performance and this and that. And that car is so numb and isolating, but that's what you want in that vehicle. Yeah. Like, it just goes down the highway for hours and you don't feel anything. It's quiet. The suspension just smooths everything out. Yeah, it's more like you're just experiencing the drive as opposed to having to worry about it. And Super Cruise now, win-win.
Super Cruise was great. It really does reduce driver fatigue when you're doing a long road trip. And what's nice about Buick is a lot of the things that you could only get in a Cadillac a few years ago, Buick basically has most of them right now. So,
yeah. All right, Kyle, what's your under the radar?
The Miata. No. 911. The LC is the ultimate journalist car, right? Can we all agree on that? Where it's like the average person has no idea what it is, but every journalist you ask them, they're like, the best car. It's a modern classic. Mine's a bit of a cop-out, but stay with me here. Mine is the Camry.
Okay.
I know it's one of the best-selling, if not the best-selling cars in the U.S., but I'm saying it because I don't think people give it the credit it deserves, where it really is, especially this new model. It's basically a Prius with actual space in the back for people. It's incredibly easy and comfortable to drive. It's kind of a good deal now because everyone goes to crossovers. So a RAV4 feels overpriced for what you're getting, whereas a Camry, you get a lot of stuff for not a lot of money. The XLE has really nice trim on its interior. You get incredible fuel mileage because, of course, you do. I just think the Camry deserves a lot more credit, and I think a lot of people who don't actually need a crossover would be much better suited in it because it's a quieter, more relaxed drive.
And I think it's, as much as competitors will hate to hear this, I think it's the only midsize sedan that had a full-blown effort in its most recent redesign. Everyone else is just kind of sort of riding out are we going to keep this model name alive? It feels like, whereas Toyota is still going all in on the Camry, and it shows. Yeah, no, it's a good pick.
I gave it a lot of votes for NAC Toy Car of the Year last year. It didn't win, and I was actually surprised, given exactly what you just said, Mike, because I thought, hey, this is a really fully baked, like all-in effort in the segment. And frankly, some of its competitors were not as thoroughly redesigned. So, and I know you guys had that for other awards too. So I agree. That's a great car.
I think we could also agree, although it's not unknown, the Maverick is still underrated. More people need to learn about that vehicle. Yeah, it should be up there selling well. But okay, final thing, and then we'll let everyone get on with their holidays. The most ridiculous thing you drove this year, and you can interpret that however you want. I could easily say the two Lamborghinis, but I am actually going with. I picked two, and it turns out they have the same engine. So I drove a Range Rover Sport Edition 2 with over 600 horsepower and a high price tag and every luxury possible, which is insane. And then last week I drove the Land Rover Defender Octa with an even more powerful version of that engine. And they're both they're ridiculous in the weight and the numbers. You think, oh, they're fast, but they're not crazy fast. But oh man, did they launch violently. And the price tags and the exclusivity, it's ridiculous in like the best way.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, well, I mean, I guess I'll go with McLaren 750S. I mean, I guess I'm thinking ridiculous. What has more power and what is more expensive? That reaches up there. I briefly considered the Lucid Gravity just because it's very expensive, and I kind of struggle to figure out how that's going to fit in the segment. Whereas like the Air to me, like sort of fits better for what they're going for. You know, I don't know. I may be driving the Ram 2500 in a few days here. So if that happens, that I could change my vote. But I guess for now, we'll go with that. You know, ridiculous in a good way, in the way that it's supposed to be ridiculous, you know? Yeah, I didn't mean to pick two McLarens, but hey, if we're going to do the lightning round here, so it goes.
Yeah. Let's see here. I mean, yeah, like Mike said, I could pick the Lamborghini. It feels like an easy answer though. I could also say the VinFast VF9 because
in a different way, probably.
Yeah, in a very different way, but I won't because that seems a little mean. So where I'm going to go is what's the full name of it? The Mercedes-Benz G580 with EQ technology, the electric Geländewagen.
Yeah.
It was my first G-Wagon experience, and my review should be out when people are hearing this. It's the strange thing about that car or that SUV is, I mean, it is a whole bunch of contradictions. It's probably the best G-Wagon, and I think that doesn't matter at all.
No, I you know what, I think that's the best pick out of all three of us because we have a military rooted vehicle that's become a symbol for luxury that's now also electric, but it doesn't do any of them fantastic, but it's a weird mix. And yeah, it's that's a pretty good one. It's funny because I was thinking next year an easy front runner, and I haven't even driven it yet, it's going to be that Cayenne because
oh geez, yeah
a Cayenne EV with over 1,000 horsepower just sounds insane. But
with the extending tail fins,
yeah,
like, that's nuts.
Nobody drove any Bugattis this year or anything? No Bugattis or crazy Bentleys, but
no,
that's next year.
Yeah, next year I'll drive the 2026 F1 car and I'll put that down.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, well, that wraps up the show. We've gone through a lot of our hits, mostly a couple misses from the last year. We'll be back in the new year with new shows and new guests and a whole lot more cars to review. But until then, we'll see you later and have a good holiday.
So long, everybody.
eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. Ever try to buy your car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on blind trust? That era is over. Now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary.